Hello, everyone. How's it going? I'm asking you
Good.
guys.
Oh, what's up?
You're all like, what's up?
Let's
All
tweet
right.
it out.
Oh, yeah. Go retweet it. While you guys retweet it, guys, Denver Rubber Company is the most reliable local partner for your long-term projects. DRC remains open to supply products to other essential businesses such as medical, military defense, government, wind energy, and food and beverage industries. They're family-owned and operated, and diehard Denver sports fans. With their industry knowledge and their precise manufacturing capabilities, DRC is committed to supporting your needs, especially during these uncertain times. Be sure to call them today for any of your needs at 1-800-259-0010 or visit them at drcfirst.com/DNVR. Welcome into the Denver Sports Podcast presented by Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. It's Friday, so of course it's time for a nice cold Breck brew, and they're offering beer and food delivery, so don't forget to check them out and use the promo code DNVR for $5 off. I ran out of all my Breck brews, unfortunately.
That happens.
So I'm drinking some pineapple juice right now.
Gonna have to restock before tonight.
I know, especially because we're playing Jackbox, which I keep calling Jack in the Box.
Nice, understandable.
You just make things up sometimes. Jackbox with a bunch of subscribers and stuff like that. So it's going to be fun. But how is everyone doing?
Tired? Can I say tired, Allie? Is that allowed?
Yes, you can say tired.
Gorgeous day. Still recovering from the draft. Still pumping out content. Back to normal life. As I was telling Henry on the draft podcast, it's kind of sunk in that, the NFL offseason was really what was holding me together. And now it's like, what's next? So it's been a weird, tiring week, but looking forward to this weekend more than I have in a while, I must say.
Well, don't worry, Andre. We're still talking draft. That's what this podcast is going to be about.
Nice.
Talking about the Broncos draft picks, how we think they did, and then also talking about some of our local college guys who were drafted or signed with teams. But first, I'm going to have you each go around and give me your grade on the Broncos draft, starting with you, Zach.
A-. The Broncos, John Elway crushed his draft for a third straight year. He had 10 picks in the draft and came away with 10 players. Didn't move around, but still got the guys that I wanted him to get. And the biggest thing from this is the Broncos got 3 instant starters, 2 upgrades at wide receiver, and of course gave Drew Lock a starting national champion center.
All right, Andre.
Well put. Yeah, for me, it's an A. I'm even less picky. I thought they got one of the steals of the first round in Jerry Jeudy, one of the best value picks, kind of a dream scenario for the Broncos to land him.
Yeah. Andre, how crazy was it that the board fell perfectly? Like our mock drafts, the board didn't even fall that great.
No. I mean, I thought... we were getting tweets for months of people doing draft simulators and having drafts similar to what the Broncos ended up with and telling them, well, yeah, if it happened, that'd be great. And then this might have beat some of the simulators we had tweeted to us. So, yeah, pretty crazy to have Jeudy land to you in a loaded wide receiver class. We thought teams would be desperate. They were lucky that in the first 14, only one wide out went, and they really took advantage. Then, like Zach said, you get 2 more instant starters in KJ Hamler and Lloyd Cushenberry. Great value picks with both those guys who graded out as second rounders. And I really liked what they were able to do with cornerback Michael Ojemudia from Iowa as kind of another depth piece outside, a physical guy who brings more size to the cornerback room for the Broncos. He'll be great in that Will Parks role, I think, on top of adding that depth. And then Albert O, Drew Lock's favorite target in college, I thought was a huge get. So 5 of those 10 guys are really, really good value picks, including guard Netane Muti, who I think has incredible upside. So, yeah, I thought it was really one of the best classes of this 2020 NFL draft. And this is a trend we've seen over the last couple of years for the Broncos.
Hank?
Yeah, I think Andre really nailed it there. I mean, basically every pick, as Andre ran through, like it was a good pick. It's tough to find many flaws anywhere. I think I gave him an A- in our post-draft show. And so I'd feel like a bit of a fraud upgrading that to an A, even though I am starting
Ryan
to get
would-
more A vibes
Ryan
now.
would call you a fraud if you upgraded.
Okay, well, I'll leave it with the A minus. But hey, if you're including the undrafted free agents, Levante Bellamy, he's gonna make this roster for sure. If you get to include them, then I'll upgrade it to an A.
All right, Justin.
I'm going to give him a B. I went into this draft really wanting to get a tackle. How it played out, I don't really think you can be upset. There were 4 really good tackles. All of them were off the board when you pick at 15. Jerry Jeudy's there, the best wide receiver in an incredibly deep class. I mean, it was a really awesome draft. As they pointed out, you got multiple guys that should be starters, but the only reason I wouldn't give it an A is I'm still just concerned about that depth, that tackle. I know they seem to be excited about it. I know Drew Lock getting rid of the ball faster, all of that stuff could be a factor, but we'll see. I'm not sold just yet on Garrett Bowles.
And that's not just you. A lot of Broncos country is still extremely concerned. Even our very own Matt McChesney was upset that they didn't go after a tackle, and he came on DNVR Draft Day Live to talk about that. What do you guys feel about that, Zach and Andre?
Well, that's why I gave him an A minus and not an A, because the players they got are an A grade, but the position they didn't address is mind-baffling. Now, I totally understand, and it was a great move going with Jerry Jeudy in the first round, the way the draft board fell to them. Don't reach for an Ezra Cleveland or a Josh Jones there when you could have got Jerry Jeudy. But then those tackles slipped in the second round, and then there was still some guys there in the third round that you could have got, and the Broncos said no. Now, I know the Broncos weren't going to be able to come out of this draft filling every single need. But in my mind, they had to get wide receivers, and they had to get at least one tackle for Mike Munchak. And now you're walking away with the only tackle that you brought in this year is Hunter Watts, an undrafted guy from Central Arkansas who has the most hilarious Photoshop job online of him in a Broncos uniform. And that's so it.
Bad. Yeah.
Oh, it was comical.
Like, help the guy out.
Yeah. But that's all you did. That is disappointing. So, Justin, I mean, I'm right there with you. Once they had passed up on starting tackles that would be there, they still needed to get depth.
Yeah, and there were some picks there in that day 2 range and even early day 3, but it was a little tougher there. I think it's a similar situation to what we had last year with them bypassing Devin Bush, who people like me were very high on, thought it was a perfect fit as a coverage linebacker, but they stick with what they had, and it led to the emergence of Alexander Johnson. I doubt they'll be so fortunate this year where Wilkinson has an Alexander Johnson's type emergence, or maybe Watts does, or who knows. But just like last year with the Bush not picking Bush, we deferred to Vic Fangio and his expertise on linebackers. I think we need to defer to Mike Munchak and his expertise on offensive tackles. The guys after the big 4 that did drop were all a bit length deficient, and I think that was a non-starter for the Broncos, even though for people like me, I saw some intriguing pieces who could have got away even if their length wasn't ideal.
So a few days removed from the draft with that left tackle position, do you guys think it's going to be Garrett Bowles? I don't know how I just blanked on Garrett Bowles' name. Garrett Bowles, or do you think there's still a chance that the Broncos bring in someone like Jason Peters?
Zach, you'd know better, though. Maybe Allie's brain there on Garrett Bowles' name had a bit of a holding penalty, if you will.
Well,
I want to kick you out for that one.
Bringing some Ryan to this.
Yeah, that's right. Ryan vibes here.
Well, I mean, John Elway said after the draft, after he didn't get anyone in free agency and didn't get anyone in the draft, he said, we have to upgrade at left tackle. We have to get better at that position. And that is true. But the timing was just funny because you just passed up on all of the opportunities to upgrade that position. So the way they're talking about it right now is the way they're going to upgrade is by having an open competition between Garrett Bowles and Elijah Wilkinson. And guys, if you thought Garrett Bowles wasn't getting it done, Elijah Wilkinson played right tackle for a lot of last season and was worse than Garrett Bowles by a pretty significant margin. And then you're going to have him play left tackle. That's not the answer. So that's why I'm not ruling out bringing in a Jason Peters. And the more days that go on when Jason Peters and some of these left tackles are unsigned, the cheaper they get.
Yeah, I mean, I am a big Jason Peters fan. Love him, loved him in Philadelphia. His leadership that he brings in that locker room and is huge, but he is injury prone. And who's going to be your backup? Is it you're going to keep Garrett Bowles and have him be your backup? Jason Peters has gotten hurt every season the last few years.
Yeah, I'm sorry that Jason Peters can't be protecting Jalen Hurts this year for you.
Bye, Zach.
Oh man.
Got kicked out. Wow.
The
I
We're
don't think-
not talking about the struggles of my Eagles fandom here.
I don't think you could drink legally last time Jason Peters played all 16 games in a season, Allie.
I think that's true.
But Garrett Bowles, if he's your backup swing tackle, that's great.
I think he could
Especially-
also learn a lot from Jason.
Yeah.
The thing that concerns me though is as a college guy, when I hear, that narrative or like that rhetoric, it reminds me of when you're a team and you don't have a quarterback. That's what they always go to. It's like we have this open competition and they're all going to push each other. And somehow that's going to make 3 mediocre guys somehow like get a little bit better. And it almost never plays out that way. And I know that Bulls played better down the stretch. I know that Munchak knows more than all of us, but it kind of sounds like they're going to ride with it and figure it out down the line.
Yeah, in grading these draft classes out, I did feel like with as many free agents still available, some teams did kind of get to a point where they said, we're not going to fill that need with someone we really like at this point. We're going to kick the can down the road and see what kind of market is, because you can go by position. There's like 3 worthy veterans who you could plug and play. And at tackle, it's Kelvin Beachum, who's played under Mike Munchak before, Peters, who we just mentioned, and Cordy Glenn, who was traded for a first round swap just 2 years ago. So, there are some guys who have had, I don't know about a history of success, but a history of being able to hold their own at the tackle spot in the NFL.
Hold their own. I see what you did there, Dre.
Oh, that wasn't intentional, I swear.
I'll kick you out too.
I didn't mean it.
We have some people commenting on Hank's beard.
Yeah.
It really is coming in, Henry.
I'm coming around to it too. We'll see. We'll see what happens in a few weeks when we all get out of here.
You would say it's growing on you, wouldn't you?
Well, it is growing on me.
I'm done. I'm kicking you all out.
I don't know
Ryan's
what's
not here,
happened.
so you all decide to gang up on me with this. All right. Well, we've said it here. Everyone has said it, but really, how much better did the Broncos get this offseason? How could you tangibly describe it? Let's start with you, Zach.
A lot. And tangibly, I mean, it's by adding, this was the Drew Lock draft, and we've said it for this entire week, and that's what you had to do. It's pretty funny that John Elway comes out after the draft and says, we believe in Drew Lock, and that's why we decided to build around him. And it's funny because I take a step back and say, wait, so you didn't believe in Joe Flacco, Case Keenum, Trevor Siemian, Paxton, so you weren't going to give them tools to succeed? Poor guys. But now he's given Drew Lock the tools to succeed, and Jerry Jeudy can instantly be 1,000-yard receiver this year. That wouldn't shock me at all. At least an 800-yard receiver to pair with Courtland Sutton. Oh, and then you get this weapon in KJ Hamler, and he can be a weapon from the get-go because of the speed that he brings. And then you upgrade the interior offensive line, not just at center, but you also went out and got Graham Glasgow in free agency. At least the interior of the offensive line is going to be great. And so that tangibly, I mean, a couple of wins better than last season from the get-go. And that's just assuming Drew Lock is good. If Drew Lock is great, then you're talking more than just a couple wins.
Going back to something you said at the beginning of that, Zach, do you think Elway sees a bit of himself in Drew right now?
Yeah.
Some of the comments he made was like, I wanted to give Drew things that I wish I had.
Yeah, absolutely. And last night on DNVR Watches, we watched the 1986 AFC Championship game, of course, the drive game against the Browns. And it's pretty crazy, the weapons, or should I say lack of weapons, that John Elway had until, of course, when they won the 2 Super Bowls, when Elway was surrounded by 2 Hall of Famers, a Ring of Famer and another should-be Ring of Famer. And that's what John's saying to Drew. He's saying, I'm not going to make you go through a decade of having nothing to work with and you have to drag this team on offense, I'm going to give you, potentially a couple of Ring of Famers right away, and a first-round pick in Noah Fant, and a first-round pick in Jerry Jeudy, and a second-round pick in Cortland Sutton, and a second-round pick in KJ Hamler, and by the way, 2 Pro Bowl running backs.
Yeah, I feel like for quarterbacks, when you have those 15-year careers, even if you're staying with one team, you're playing on so many different teams. I mean, you look at the weapons John Elway had early with the defensive line or the defense, and then with the offensive line, it all just kind of shifts until you find the formula that works with a quarterback. It's just kind of cool to know for sure now what this first Drew Lock Broncos team looks like with all of these weapons, with this defense, with some holdovers from the last couple of years when they've been a very good defense. And you know what? You give it a run for 3-4 years, and if it works, there you go. You succeeded in the first third of Drew Lock's career, and then you get to try something else for the next third. And if it doesn't, you still get a couple more chances down the road. But we have seen before our eyes this first iteration of the Drew Lock Broncos be built, and it's just pretty exciting right now. Just hard to wait for the season.
Yeah. Maybe I'll put a little caution in here because I think the offseason was really well. The only move you could really gripe about would be the Melvin Gordon contract, but given the longevity of it, I wouldn't dwell on that too much, and the fact that it freed them up to address other needs in the draft and, in a lot of ways opened them up to have the kind of A-level draft class they were able to come away with. Still, though, I think so much of the additions this offseason were great. So much of their success next season, though, I do think will be determined by the key injuries they had last season and how those guys will bounce back, especially the big free agent signings from that 2019 offseason in Juwan James, who's going to be crucial for that offensive line, and Bryce Callahan, who might be just as important for that secondary. And then you add the uncertainty around Bradley Chubb and how much he'll be back to 100%. I think those 3 guys are the only thing that have me a little hesitant to say, hey, they can start competing with the Chiefs, because on paper, once these young guys come around, I mean, the theme of the offseason is how much better the offense improved, and that's really exciting. But I do think those 3 recoveries from injuries are kind of the one thing that have me questioning how things will go next year.
Well, and Dre, to hop in really quick to add to your point, when John Elway has talked about Bryce Callahan and Juwan James's injuries just in the past 2 weeks, he's been kind of cautiously optimistic, and the cautious is the important word, because in the past, it'd be very easy for him to say, yep, those guys are going to be good. Instead, he's saying, yeah, I hope that they're back. And I think that's a very realistic standpoint, and I'm happy he's taking that approach. But the fact that he's being cautious about it makes me even more concerned.
Justin, what do you think?
It was definitely a really good offseason, but to me, it all comes down to that left tackle. I don't want to beat keep going back to this over and over and over again, but it's great that you have these weapons. You go get Hamler in the second round, and he's your Tyreek Hill type wide receiver, that deep threat that can beat you over the top. But even looking past the Chiefs, you got to worry about Joey Bosa and the Chargers and protecting your quarterback. And so, can they come in right away and get this offense rolling with guys like Melvin Gordon? Can they have Noah Fant make an impact right away like he was able to with Drew Lock down the stretch? I'm optimistic. I think there's definitely reason to be excited about this offense, especially with all the weapons that they have. But it wasn't a perfect offseason. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, it is still a problem at tackle for sure, but I think that they had enough assets to fill a lot of the holes that they had, but not all of them. And they kind of just had to pick one. And if the option is KJ Hamler or one of the second round tackles that was still available, I would definitely be taking KJ Hamler. I think that that's the right move because, that third receiver is a starter just as much as a left tackle is a starter. And I think that he's more valuable than any of those left tackles because they probably aren't going to play until next year. As much as you'd like to solve that problem for next year, so you don't go into the offseason knowing you're losing Garrett Bowles and you don't have a replacement, now at least you only have one problem to deal with next offseason. And
that's fair, especially with it being a Pat Shurmur offense and them wanting to spread out everything and really, stretch defenses a little bit. So
an up tempo and stuff,
the
right?
up-tempo, yeah.
That's what I was doing there. I wasn't saying speed up your point. I was up tempo.
Today, man.
yeah, exactly.
So we have someone in the comments saying, why do you think the national media is still putting us towards the bottom half of the league? I've seen where the Raiders and Chargers are ranked higher than the Broncos. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that a lot of the national media didn't watch Drew Lock play in those final games. The Broncos were done. National media was focused on other things. It kind of reminds me of the same reason why the national media, anytime there was a quarterback available, was like, oh, well, maybe the Broncos. Same with Jameis Winston, guys like that. And I think it's just because they haven't really paid attention to what's going on in Denver. And so they're just putting them in that category.
Yeah, it's totally based on Drew Lock's perception. Totally. And we see this all the time. You have a guy you weren't as high on in the draft. You're reluctant to believe he's the real deal if he starts to succeed in the NFL. You're delaying eating crow on Drew Lock. And I think that's what a lot of these national guys are doing.
Keep talking. My computer just dropped from 40 to 2, so I will be right back, but let's keep talking about that question.
Well, yeah, and Allie, you nailed it. That's exactly why the Broncos aren't getting some credit, is because people don't believe in Drew Lock. They see a second-round quarterback, like Andre said. A lot of national people are starting to have to kind of tread backward on what they thought about Drew Lock and why he fell to the second round. Because at least last year he proved to be really good. And yeah, he went out in the Texans game, but then those national people come back and say, well, look at him, what he did in the Chiefs game. And that was probably the game that most people watched of Drew Lock in terms of a national perspective. And it was his worst game. It was also in the middle of a terrible snowstorm. So I don't think anyone really expected him to go out and succeed. But when people buy into Drew Lock, they're going to go from maybe 0 where they feel about the Broncos now to 90, because they're going to say, oh my gosh, Drew Lock's good. And he has KJ Hamler, Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant, Phillip Lindsay, Melvin Gordon, all of these pieces. And then, oh, by the way, the Broncos are spending the most money on the defensive side of the ball of any team in the league. And they have this defensive guru in Vic Fangio. So I think, and you've kind of seen it over the past week. I've seen a lot of national media members start feeling this way about the Broncos, and it does go from like 0 to 100 like that for people.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a big gap between the high end of the evaluations of the Broncos from the national media and the low end. So you see a bunch that have them in like that 25, 26 range, but also Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports has the Broncos at number 10, which could even be a little bit optimistic. At least at this point, until we see it all come together on the field. And I think that's just where the Broncos are when you're in this transition stage, kind of going from an outside the playoffs team to being a likely playoff team. Some people are going to jump on the train sooner than others. And some people, like maybe Frank Schwab, might be a little bit ahead of the pace here.
Well, welcome back, Allie. And Hank, just to go off that, Frank Schwab, I believe, lives in Denver. So he is a guy that has seen Drew Lock and has seen what he does and what he brings. So that's maybe one of the big reasons why he has him. He's so optimistic about him.
Well, there you go.
Are you guys worried at all about defenses having an entire offseason to adjust? I mean, obviously everybody in Denver is really excited about Drew Lock, but I guess if I was playing devil's advocate here, even if you were intrigued by this offense, even if you were intrigued by the potential that Drew Lock brings, the counter is always, can he do it again in year 2 now that defenses know what he's about? Because, as we all know, he came in, he stepped in, and it wasn't like defenses had been preparing for him all season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because watching the tape, I'm not sure there's a ton you can key in, a ton of like his success stemming from stuff they were doing schematically. He was just good at making plays off script, extending plays with his legs, making nice throws from awkward platforms because pressure was coming and stuff. So I think maybe one of the ways you adjust is teams didn't really respect that deep passing game and had to a little more with Lock. So maybe you see a few more safeties deep, and that allows the Broncos to run the ball more. Now that's going to test that young interior offensive line to really get their stuff together soon and be able to run. I think another part of it is maybe the defense isn't getting as much respect because on paper they look great, but with all the injuries last year, no one was talking about the Broncos as an elite defense, even though we know they could pretty quickly be a top 5 unit with all the pieces coming together and being consistent.
Justin, I think it's a fantastic question. And yeah, I am concerned about that. And that's why with Paxton Lynch, it was such a concern because quarterbacks, rookies, it's not a surprise to see them jump out to a good start when they first start playing, because NFL defenses don't know how to adjust to them. And then when Paxton wasn't good, even then, that was a huge red flag. And with Drew Lock, he was good. And now the NFL will adjust, and then it's on Drew whether if he can adjust. And if he can adjust, then he's a legit franchise quarterback. The good thing is we'll know that by the end of this year, because maybe teams don't have enough on tape until the first 5 games of the season, but then they'll be able to counter in the next 5 games. And then the Broncos will have, 6 games after that to see if he can counter that and if he can be their guy moving forward.
Miguel here brings up a good point. Also, you do have a new offensive coordinator, so the game plan is going to change. Plus, you've just added a lot of speed and a lot more receivers to your offense. So I think that will also play a part in it.
I think at this point, we've basically completely shot down my retort. So we're good. We can be excited. Broncos are winning the Super Bowl. Drew Lock for AFC MVP. I don't know. Let's do it.
As Ryan said on the DNVR Draft Day Live,
MVP, sorry.
Plan the parade, which let me tell you, my dad was pretty, as the Philadelphia native and Eagles fan, he was pretty upset with Ryan for saying plan the parade. Like, okay, calm down, Broncos fans. And I was like, Dad, you sound like such an Eagles fan right now. Stop. But you guys might have noticed that I didn't talk about Manscaped to start this podcast, but don't worry, we're still talking about them right now. If you've purchased or used this product, you already know Manscaped is the best in men's below the belt grooming, and they have the right tools for the job. If you don't, what are you waiting for? Honestly, besides just below the belt grooming, you can do a lot with that lawnmower, right, Henry? You gave yourself a quarantine haircut with the lawnmower.
And it worked perfectly. Like the way it works is like you just have to look in the mirror and see like, this part sticks out just a little bit too much, and just clean it up. I bet from the side it doesn't look nearly as good, but from the front it looks like it's supposed to. It's a perfect
Are you
product.
sure? Why do we have the hat going then?
Because I didn't take a shower today or yesterday.
Wow.
Well, I'm so sad. I'm so sad I know so much about these products, but I hope that you used the Reviver.
The Reviver,
deodorant. Yeah.
That's right.
God.
A little bounce back for those balls. I'm glad though we're doing the segment because I was afraid we shaved it away.
Oh, that was predictable.
Bye, Jay.
You're done. Don't forget to use the code DNVR20 for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. All right, Andre. That's your second strike, I think.
No, that was one. I've had one strike.
Andre,
okay.
High five for getting kicked out. Other way. Yeah, this is hard, isn't it?
Nice.
Allie's like the NBA ref that is loose with the T's. You argue one little call and she's hitting you with it. I don't want to hear it.
Right. It's true.
See, even Ryan says I'm so proud. So even he's saying that you guys, I'm not proud. All right. But I guess we can keep having fun because I've got a little game for us finishing up talking some Broncos. You guys know the game like, marry, kill. There's another word for the first one.
Yeah, of course.
Well, let's do some of that for the Broncos draft picks, but with keep, trade, cut. All right?
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I love it.
Let's start off. Okay, each of you are going to have to tell me it. Okay, who wants? Justin, we'll go first with you.
Okay. Probably good because I know the least.
Keep, trade, cut. KJ Hamler, Lloyd Cushenberry, or Albert Okwebunam.
Oh, man.
I only get to keep one in that situation.
Yep.
I got to keep Cushenberry because I've been preaching offensive line this entire podcast. And so I think I'd come off hypocritical if I didn't take him.
True.
And I guess I would cut Albert O, which would be really tough to do, but I really like what you have in Noah Fant. I don't want to lose that deep threat option. Man, and plus, got to commit to Cushenberry because he just seems like a stand-up guy. Like if I want to really commit to someone, you want to trust him. I feel like I can trust Cushenberry.
Mm-hmm.
So you're trading Hamler.
Yep, trading Hamler, getting some capital back.
All right, Henry. Keep, trade, cut.
I think Justin made some good points. When I'm looking at it, I'm saying who is going to pan out. You know, you don't want to be trading away the guy that works out and holding on to one of the risks. This is how I'm seeing it. So I would rather hold on to Cushenberry because I'm sure that he is going to be the long-term answer at center. As much as I think that KJ Hamler is going to be a great receiver, there is still a little bit of risk. You know, he's kind of small. You've seen receivers at least have like slow starts. I think there could be some nervous moments. Meanwhile, as a second-round pick, go see if you can get yourself a second-rounder back next year. Alberto, I really fought with myself here. I wanted to find a way to keep him with Drew. You know, I think that he could be like the third down converter for Drew. That's what he said, that's what they were like. Missouri. I don't know. I like the idea. You know, there are only two tight ends in the entire NFL that ran a faster 40-yard dash at the combine than either Fant or Okwuegbunam. They have the third and fourth fastest 40 times of any tight end. But I still just can't hold on. As much fun as that sounds, he's cut.
Buffs and Rams in harmony.
Yep. Interesting.
Hank, who are you calling a small guy?
Sorry, Zach. I didn't even think of what that could mean for you if I'm saying that about KJ Hamler.
He's a big boy.
KJ has 15 pounds on him. He's a big boy, yes.
Another big boy.
And so to me, I gotta keep that big boy. He's sticking with me. I'm keeping KJ Hamler because guys, if you get rid of KJ Hamler, what is the whole talk of this draft turn into? Instead of speed and weapons for Drew and everything, it turns into, okay, you got a fantastic receiver in Jerry Jeudy. Then it turns into like an all-around draft. But that's not what this was. This was building a track team on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm keeping KJ Hamler, but I do agree with both of you. Lloyd Cushenberry, I feel more comfortable being a long-term starter for a long time. And so it is a little tough to not pick him, but you got Mike Munchak. You got the best offensive line coach for the position that it's the second least valuable offensive line position on the team. You plug Austin Schlottman in there, whatever, and let Mike Munchak work his magic. And although it's tough to cut Drew Lock's good friend Alberto, you do that move, Drew will have a good friend in Jerry Jeudy. So then I am trading Cushenberry because I think he has some value.
Man, everyone cutting Albert. Oh, all right. Okwuegbunam. We say his full name.
Impressive.
I mean, some do, some don't.
Real quick, someone said, what adult beverage goes well with pineapple juice? Tequila all the way.
Yes.
I don't have tequila in here yet.
That's a good answer.
Or gin. I like that.
All right, Andre.
I guess
trade cut.
Yeah, I've come full circle with this because the initial reaction, I think the correct answer at first was what Justin said. You trade Hamler, you keep Cush. It should be extend, or you like Cush. It should be extend, and then you cut Albert O. Now, cutting Albert O, I think, is the logical solution, but boy, do I feel bad about the signal this sends to Drew. I mean, Drew Lock and I, we're breaking quarantine. We're having some long sit downs. Maybe we're going to Elway's. We're having a little illegal steak dinner out and about. Like, we are really making sure he's on board. I'm telling you, look, Allie's forcing me to do this. We drafted him to keep him. Allie is forcing us to do this. So our hands are tied.
You're really painting the real picture. Well, I really feel like I'm in the room being blamed.
You know me. I'm reading stories to 2-year-olds all day, so I've got this down. And then I think, so Hamler does have the better trade value, I think, which makes him more intriguing to trade because obviously speed at wide receivers at a premium. I also think he's the much harder piece to replace, which is why he was drafted higher and why he would give you a better return. So I think I'm extending Hamler, I'm trading Cushenberry, and I'm cutting Albert O after some long sit downs. with Drew Lock. Because, we have Patrick Morris, who could play at center, Munchak likes. We have Elijah Wilkinson, who I think is fine at guard, and you can push either Reisner or Glasgow at center. So we've got a few more options. Even Natane Muti, my guy, could play at guard and move those guys at center. I feel a lot better about the options we have to replace Cushenberry as the starting center than I do finding an emergency slot receiver at this point in the offseason.
Everyone in the comments is really, really putting down my tequila love, and I'm not very happy about it. We got tequila does not play well with others.
Wow.
Well, and then
Interesting.
you know what does play well with everyone? Breck Brews. That's true, but
So
I
true.
don't have any Breck Brews. Then 9 out of 10 of my bad decisions have been made after a few extra tequilas. That's on you.
9 out of 10 of all of my decisions have been made after a few extra tequilas. So
Of your good
proportionally, it makes sense.
That's problematic.
Just all decisions, period, that Henry makes. Good
I
and
think-
bad, mediocre.
And then 9 out of 10 people would agree with that statement. I think everyone here has had to take a shot with me at one point.
Oh, yeah.
I have not.
You haven't?
Whoa.
Wow. That's
know.
really
Dozens.
upsetting.
I
Gotta
thought about
change
just going
that.
along with it to not ruin the moment, but we got to be honest.
Well, DNVR bar, that's where all the tequila, they wanted to name buying 4 tequila shots.
The alley.
It's fun. It's light. You're having fun.
That's
Anyways, Miguel, he said I'm gonna have to try that tequila and pineapple. My go-to drink is tequila and tequila soda with a splash of pineapple. Try that one. That one's a little better.
Mm.
But
Oh man, it feels like a Friday.
next group. All right. Keep, trade, cut. McTilvin Agim,
Mm.
Albert Okwebunam,
Oh,
and Muti. I blanked on his name.
Natane.
Natane. All right, Andre, you start.
Muti, Albert O. Who was my third? I forgot the first name.
Agim.
Oh, yeah. Shoot.
A little
Oh,
harder.
man. This one is brutal. I think I'm cutting a game. I like him. I see the upside. There's other guys on the roster who bring similar upside. I wonder about his fit on the first 2 downs against the run. So I'm cutting him. Then, man, I really think Albert O is going to get you the better trade return, and they already have a lot of tight ends, and they're going to cut them. But as I've mentioned, they're pretty set on the interior offensive line as well, and Muti's injuries concern me. I'm really intrigued by what they want to do with Albert O. So I am extending Albert O, and I am trading Natane Muti.
Well,
Yay! Albert O didn't get cut this time.
Albert O lives, yes.
well, and Alberto's going to live in my world too, because Dre, I'm going the exact same formula as you. Despite not being drafted higher than Agim, I'm still keeping him because of just what he brings with Drew Lock, that connection, that speed, to have 2 dangerous tight ends. I mean, how often do you find that? You never find it outside of what New England had. And one of those guys was very dangerous off the field. So I'm keeping Alberto, and I'm cutting Agim, despite being the highest drafted guy of this group,
Mhm.
because I'm going to convince everyone that Muti is healthy and that he is the best guard in this draft class, just like he said, or at least, a second, third round value, and try to get that value back.
All right, Hank.
See, this is a tough one because I think if you had told me before the draft, I get to pick one of these 3 to keep and 1 to pick to trade. I mean, I don't think I'm keeping Albert Okwuegbunam, but because he was drafted and because you've already shown Drew Lock that he's going to be part of the team, I'm not going to just tease Drew like that. Like, I am not going to take Albert Okwuegbunam, get Drew all excited, and then send him back out. So you have to keep him. You have to keep him. And then out of the other 2, it's just if you're not going to have either on the roster, which one you're going to get more for? I think it's a game, and I think that I think that you have to. I think that you have to trade him.
All right,
Cut
Justin.
Moody. Yeah.
I'm keeping Muti because we're sticking with the offensive line theme.
Oh yeah, it's your
And I
brand.
want to
Staying
zag when everybody zigs. And
love it.
I'm going to break Drew's heart. It's going to be tough, but we're going to trade Albert O because I think, like Andre said, he's a fast tight end. They're valued in this league. I think you could probably get something for him.
Yeah.
Maybe you could get a little more for a game, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough call there. I really, it'd be interesting to see if they had passed on him in the third round. How high would he have gone?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, well, in the comments, it really is a Friday. It's the weekend. Before we get to a certain comment that's asking us about a keep, trade, cut, it's going to be beautiful outside, guys. And unfortunately, you're stuck at home. But fortunately, you could and should go restock on some of your favorite adult beverages at Davidson's Beer, Wine, and Spirits. Don't forget that supporting our partners is supporting us. So download Davidson's app today for incredible deals and sign up for their loyalty program. Plus, their sales floor is back up and running in Centennial and Highlands Ranch. So definitely go check that out. The Keep Trade Kill, I keep wanting to say the real game. The Keep Trade Cut is where is it? Keep Trade Cut vodka, tequila, whiskey.
Oh.
I'll go first. We're
cut
marrying
'em all.
tequila. We're trading vodka and we're cutting whiskey.
What?
I think
That's
you'd get better
absurd.
value for whiskey though.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that's true.
So
That's
I think
true.
I
No one
agree.
really-
I just reversed
No
the last
one, no
two.
one really likes vodka, so
No.
we'll switch it to
right.
trading whiskey and just cutting vodka altogether.
Nice.
You
Justin?
gotta keep tequila.
Yeah.
Yep.
No way. I'm trading tequila because I know I can get value for it if I trade it to some sorority girls. I'm locking down whiskey because whiskey will cure
Sorority
life
girls are
problems.
all about that vodka. You know that.
That's a good point. All right, I'll cut tequila just to zag, I guess. And we'll trade vodka.
Just a zag. No other reason. Just a zag.
Just as that.
Tequila's the way to go. I can't wait for everyone to go down to the DNVR bar. There is an incredible whiskey mule on the menu. If you want it with tequila, they'll make it for you. Then there's a great margarita. And then, of course, we've got all the top alcohol and Breck brews you'd want. So I can't wait till we can get back to the DNVR bar.
Yeah, bring your sleep sack, Justin. You're not going home that night.
All right.
Especially if you've never drank tequila with me. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, AJ always gets so mad. I think AJ and Andre and Eric always ask for another type of shot instead of taking the tequila shot with me, which is pretty disappointing.
Oh yeah, no fun. Boo.
If somebody else is buying it, you just have to take it. That's the rule. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. If you like it, if you hate it, if you're
No.
allergic to it, you just got to take it.
No, I'm nice, and I'll let them take their Jaeger shot instead, because that's punishment in itself, taking a Jaeger shot over a tequila shot. But
Ew.
anyways, all right.
Disappointing the women in my life, a real theme of this quarantine for me. So I'm glad you stepped up to the plate and added yourself to that list.
That's true. Kate will always take a tequila shot with me.
That's true. Yep, she does not disappoint, unlike some of us.
All right, off season. Let's play this game with off season acquisitions. Keep, trade, cut. Melvin Gordon, AJ Boye, or Jarrell Casey. Justin, or we'll start with Andre first.
Okay. Two of these guys just got traded, so we kind of know their value.
True.
And then there's a running back who was around for like 10 days in free agency before the Broncos arguably overpaid him just a smidge. So that's to be considered. I think I'm keeping... Oh, man, so many factors in play. I think I'm keeping Bouye. I think he's just the more valuable asset and plays the more valuable position. I will then... I'm going to shoot. Yeah, I'm trading Casey. I have to trade Casey. I think that's going to get me a better return.
I think so too.
I can cut Gordon, and I feel better about being able to find some running back along the way to replace him. That's a tough one, though. That is a tough one.
You got someone in the comments agreeing with you completely.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's probably the wise way to go, Dre. But I'm gonna roll the dice on this one because
Love when Zach rolls the dice.
keeping Jarrell Casey gives your defense an opportunity to be absolutely lethal, but more lethal than we've really ever seen, including the 2015 Super Bowl defense. Because could you imagine getting that? If Shelby Harris can be that, or that, oh my gosh, Malik Jackson type of role, and then Jarrell Casey is even better than Derek Wolfe was, and then you have Von Miller and Bradley Chubb at their peak. Your cornerbacks aren't going to matter as much. So you trade AJ Boye because you know you can get a 4th round pick for him. And then, like you said, Dre, Melvin Gordon was available for a long time. So I just don't think his value is that much. And you have a Pro Bowl running back in Phillip Lindsay there. So his value, unfortunately, just is not there for the Broncos. So I'm rolling the dice. I think the smart way to go and the way the Broncos would go is they would keep Boye, but I'm keeping Jarrell Casey.
Oof.
All right, Hank.
I really want to pound the table for Melvin Gordon. I just need to get that out there that this whole time I've been trying to justify pounding the table for Melvin Gordon. I just can't quite do it. But the reason why is not the reason that you think. The reason why is because of Levante Bellamy, the undrafted free agent running back who is going to be good enough as the number 2. Because the way I see it, Phil, you don't want him taking every touch. You don't want him on the field every down. You want him splitting time with somebody. The problem hasn't been that he hasn't been getting enough touches. It's been that the other touches are going to Royce Freeman, and then they lose the ball. They have to punt, whatever, and so he doesn't get back on the field. I think Levante Bellamy is enough, though, that you don't have to take Melvin Gordon. Here's what I'll do, though. I'll keep AJ Boye, keep that secondary nice, but then I am going to trade Melvin Gordon because I want to pick where this man is going, and I'm going to make sure he's not going somewhere that he is going to play the Broncos next year. That's how I see him.
All right.
Yep.
Wow.
Interesting one. Justin?
I think I got to agree with Zach on this one. I think
I thought you were going to say Henry again, and I was like,
no,
what?
if you keep Casey, I really like what that brings to the potential of the defensive line, especially with what you already have on the outside. With Chris Harris Jr. moving on, it would make me a little concerned to move on from Bouye, but I think you could trade him, and I think, like they said, you could get a 4th round pick for him. And unfortunately, you're cutting Melvin Gordon, I guess. And I wouldn't want to play him next year, like Henry said, but also he's a guy who really, he's only produced at the highest level 1 time in the NFL, maybe 2 times if you talk about before he got hurt, but I gotta agree with Zach.
What do you think of this game, guys?
Loved it.
Good.
This is fun. A blast.
Good. I'm glad. It was fun to come up with some of the scenarios. But before we wrap up, we got to talk about some college and some of our local college players that were drafted. Of course, we have to start off talking about Laviska Shenault, who was drafted in the 2nd round by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I tweeted this. I'm so happy he went early in the 2nd round because I think he deserves that. But Jacksonville, we'll see how he does there. What do you guys think?
It's so weird to talk about Viska after talking about all these other players because Viska is a player who I actually personally care about.
Yeah.
And so my first thought isn't, well, he's big and fast and will fit into whatever role in the scheme and all that kind of stuff that we talk about when we're talking about football prospects. Instead, with Viska, I think, oh no, the NFLPA actually sent out a letter to every player in the NFL a year ago that said 25% of the grievances filed against a team in the NFL come against the Jaguars. And they're fining players for nonsense. Nobody wants to play for them. That's why they have to trade away all the stars. So that's where my mind jumps, is that's just a toxic place, and it's been toxic for a while. They did lose Tom Coughlin. They fired him after 2 years. He was like their Elway, but then they've also had a GM under Elway, and so maybe that cleans things up, but that scares me. In terms of the scheme, though, I've always been saying that he should be going to a West Coast offense. You get Jay Gruden in there. He's very experienced running that offense. I think that's a good fit. You'd prefer he's with Sean Payton or a Kyle Shanahan or somebody like that, but a Jay Gruden, that's a top half of the league in terms of scheme that would fit with Viska and in terms of a coach who will properly utilize Viska until he's ready to just be a true receiver next season.
Andre, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
Justin was.
Oh, go ahead, Justin.
I was just going to say, as a CSU alum, I'll say thank God that they don't have to play this guy anymore, because standing next to him on the sideline, like, he is legitimately a freak. And this is a conversation that Henry and I have had on multiple podcasts and private conversations, but you could take Laviska Shenault and you could line him up anywhere and he's going to succeed. He could be a running back. He could be a receiver. He could be a defensive end. He could be a linebacker. You could put him anywhere because he's just a great football player. I am concerned about the infrastructure of the Jaguars, like Henry brought up with the, 25% of the grievances. Really, if you're looking at the Jags, other than like their run in the 90s, and I know they made an AFC Championship game a couple of years ago, kind of fluky with that defense. Like, the best thing this franchise has ever done is like get referenced on The Good Place, and it's just not a good place. It's where careers go to die. I'm rooting for Viska, even as a CSU guy, just because he seems like a really good dude. Obviously very exciting, and I feel bad that he slipped even to the second round, because when healthy, he's absolutely a first-round talent.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. The Jaguars, I'm a bit skeptical about how they might best utilize him and stuff. Though I think if they do use him a bit as a running back in that West Coast, he complements their other star receiver, DJ Chark, quite nicely. He'll have Gardner Minshew, like last in 2018, where there are two more exciting players in the Pac-12 than Minshew and Viska. Now they're, one's passing the ball to the other. That's kind of fun. That'll be interesting. But really, I'm just happy he went in the top 45. We'll see what happens with the Jaguars. Luckily, those star players who have left, it's not like they're on the streets begging for money. They're at better teams and are being highly compensated. So hopefully Viska can just stay healthy, maximize his potential, and whether it works out in Jacksonville or not, it doesn't really matter.
Well, and Justin said it, that Jacksonville is where it feels like careers go to die.
Yeah.
More than anything, more than any other team in the league, that's where careers are just absolutely ruined. And unfortunately, Viska's going to need some nurturing, not just from his past injury, because it seems like everything's checking out. But this is a guy, I mean, you guys all know very well that this is a guy that gets injured all the time. And at CU, he played through a lot of those injuries. And I just feel like Jacksonville, a lot of those grievances were for medical reasons, and the coaches and organization just trying to rush players back and treat them the wrong way. And that's not what Viska needs. He needs to be handled the right way. Now, if he has Trevor Lawrence throwing him the ball in 1 year from now, I think I'm going to feel a lot different in this way. Wow. But I feel bad for him. Not going in the second round because I'm happy that he didn't slide too far, but I feel bad for him.
Jumping back to that versatility thing that Justin brought up, though, Mel Tucker once told me that he and his staff thought that Viska would put up at least 7 sacks if they let him play both ways as an edge rusher.
I believe it.
Eventually, they never got to those conversations, whether that's something they would even consider doing situationally, because they knew with the injuries, they didn't want to risk him back there. But right. They had talked about what he would do as an outside linebacker on that defense.
That's incredible.
Viska answers questions on his Instagram a lot. And a lot of people always ask him, like, did you ever consider playing running back? He was like, he always says, I would love to play running back. I loved that position, but too many injuries, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I selfishly was hoping Viska to the Eagles so that Kobe's little prophecy would have come true and we could have seen a Shenault on the back of an Eagles jersey, because I know he would have loved that. But we did get a buff on the Eagles team, so I am excited. Davion Taylor was drafted by the Eagles in the 3rd round, and I am really excited for him to be a Bird.
Yeah. They only added speed this offseason. It's crazy. Go ahead, Hank.
Yeah, I mean, again, with the speed, 4.39. Davion, I wrote about this with both these guys. Their fits with both these teams, but the Eagles could not be a more perfect landing spot. All those concerns I have about going to play for the Jaguars, not even worried about scheme or any of that, none of those with the Eagles. I know people are kind of mad at the GM right now because of the way the draft went. We don't need to dig into that, but long term, I mean, they've had the same owner since like 1994, the same GM since like 2010 12 or something like that, and he's been with the organization even longer. The coaches have been there, the linebackers coaches have been there, and then you look at the schemes. They have that great defensive line. The theory almost seems to be, let's just get the run game stocked with the defensive lines so that we can use our linebackers in coverage. And so when you look at Davion, who's under 230, he may even be under 225. He's a little bit undersized to play linebacker, but you look at the linebackers they have there. Jatavis Brown, is that his name, from the Chargers? He signed there with a 1-year deal, like $1 million. He's only weighing in at like 212 pounds, and he's going to be their starting weak side linebacker with Davion Taylor waiting in the wings behind him. That's just the perfect defense for somebody like him, who may not be able to stand up to offensive linemen in the running game, but who will be able to cover, and especially when he isn't asked to play the running game all that much.
Henry, I'm interested to hear what you think about this. I was listening to some Eagles podcasts about Davion Taylor, and I think Eagles fans were just upset in general about the draft, but they weren't too excited about Davion being drafted in that 3rd round because they think he has potential, but he's not ready to go NFL talent.
I would agree with that. And usually when you look at those first 3 rounds, that's where you're looking for guys who are first round or are ready to play day one, at least contribute. With Davion, he's played football for the first time as a freshman at a junior college. He didn't even play high school football. He is still pretty raw, and he has the flashes, but it's more of, it's not strategic as much as it's, look, there's that guy with the ball. I can get him down because I'm a great athlete. There isn't as much with the senses and the IQ, and you see the flashes of it, and you can see it's developing, but it's still just not all the way there yet. And that's why I think that 1-year deal for the linebacker in front of on the depth chart is perfect. And maybe he sees time in a sub package as a slot defender, because that's a role that you can teach somebody fairly quickly, especially because it's similar to what he's played in 2 different defensive schemes with different responsibilities these last 2 years in Boulder.
I know the CSU fans probably want me to come on here and talk trash, but Davion is actually a guy who I was hoping would potentially end up in Denver. I think he would have been a huge upgrade in pass coverage from Josie Jewell. I think, like you said, he's still really raw, and there are some things he needs to improve upon, but all of the skills are there. And if he pans out, man, I think he's honestly maybe viewed as a steal down the line, just because, all that raw talent is there. And he's a guy who I expect to have a pretty nice career.
Yeah, I thought he was actually destined to land in Denver, just because I thought he may fly under the radar just a bit, and the Broncos snag him in the 4th, and maybe that was just too good to be true, as the draft said, with the Eagles grabbing him in the 3rd. But this guy just seems to be a great Vic Fangio linebacker, can fit a specific need, can be very versatile. And when I think of him, I think of Danny Trevathan potentially, and what he could have brought to the Broncos defense. I thought the Broncos liked Visca. I didn't know where he was going to go. I knew the Broncos really liked him, and I just thought it was going to happen.
So interesting. He really fits the mold, and the Broncos did this with a lot of players. He's raw on the field, but what you like is, character-wise, he is such a good kid.
Yeah.
And every step of the way, he was given a different responsibility when he first arrived at Colorado. Then last year in Mel Tucker's defense, another responsibility. Then at the Senior Bowl, he's asked to play more as a conventional middle linebacker. He learns, he improves. He might not pick it up right away. The potential and athleticism jumps off the screen. That's easy to see. But he's one of these high character raw guys who you're gambling on. Because of that high character, they can take some coaching, bring themselves along, and that'll allow them to achieve their full potential more than some dubious off-field guys, let's say.
All right, the last buff drafted was Arlington Hambright from the Chicago Bears. He went to the Chicago Bears.
Mm-hmm.
Henry, what'd you think of that?
Super happy for him, of course, is where you have to start. But he was not somebody I thought was going to get drafted.
I didn't either.
On the Buffs pod, we did our pre-draft preview. I thought that Tony Brown had a better shot. I thought Steven Montez definitely had a better shot. Even a guy like Alex Changham, I thought maybe built better for the NFL. But then after he was chosen, for a second there, I was like, wait, Arlington Hambright's name just popped up on the screen.
I know.
And
I had a
then-
double take.
Exactly. And then you start thinking about it and you're like, you know what? We were talking about him this way halfway through the season. Things kind of got a little bit sloppier toward the end of the season, but up until that point, you would have put him right up there with Tony Brown, with a Steven Montez in terms of draft odds. Again, things got ugly, but things got ugly during that tough stretch of games. So they're playing Utah, for example. He will probably move inside. He has that body. He's 6'5", 300 pounds. The arms are a little bit short, which is why he'll move inside. But again, he's a good developmental prospect, and he has an NFL offensive line body, and that means that there are going to be some teams who want to take a chance on you. So you could see that panning out for him for sure.
All right. Well, you heard a lot of Henry on these. You can definitely go listen to his podcast because the Buffs also had some undrafted free agents be signed like Steven Montez, Tony Brown, and Derek Abrams. So definitely go check that out. And we are going to wrap up the Denver Sports Podcast presented by Breckenridge Brewery. It's a Friday. Go get a Breck brew. Go have a great night. And be sure to watch us and play along at Jackbox tonight. It's going to be a good one. We had someone who said, Miguel said, "Hey, Andre, I have my shirt on its way. Can't wait."
Nice. Yeah, back in stock. Get yours.
You can go, Broncos items, Broncos gear are 25% off if you're a member. So definitely go check that out. I've got my little TDSP style shirt on at dnvrlocker.com. And we will see you guys next week.